Hi everyone, this is Brandon, and in this video I'm going to be continuing the series of solving chess puzzles on lichess.org. We left off where I achieved or broke 2500 in lichess puzzles, and I'm going to continue to try to move forward and in this video break 2600 and keeping the same goals as before, making sure that I'm not spending time analyzing variations that are unnecessary or irrelevant, not spending too much time just pondering and trying to be efficient. And again, I'm going to be explaining my thought process when approaching a puzzle. So let's just jump right into it. I've done puzzles in between. I'm right now 25-29, which I still think is pretty much similarly to where we left off. So let's just jump into it right now and see if we can get to 2600. All right, so we have this position on the board. Counting the material, it is right now equal. I think it's safe to say that both kings are mutually exposed and not safe and vulnerable to checks. The black king is vulnerable to checks on this diagonal. Obviously, there is a pawn on g7 that is doubly protected. We have to worry about a check on a light square or even on a dark square, like down here, down the line, and that pawn eventually pushing to promotion. So I think it makes sense to act. Black really has to act in this position. Can't really waste any time trying to do anything else. So immediately we're looking for forcing moves. I immediately see checks on e1, checks on g6. Even, if there aren't checks, moves even like queen e2 are possible. Just right now, just thinking about any move that inches closer to the white king. So let's start working out queen e1 check. And I think we can discard king g2 right away because that's going to run into bishop b4. And that's pretty much going to be mate pretty soon. After, for example, king h2. I think there can be anything at this point. Queen h1, king g3, queen g2, king f4, queen f3 mate. So we can throw that away. Queen e1 check. King h2. So not running into a light square. So I think it would be nice to try to force the white king onto a light square. So let's see what we can do about that. If not, can we just can we just play a move like bishop b4 and see if we can get in queen h1? So the calculation, queen e1 check, king h2, bishop e4, trying to get in queen h1 with the same thing. That also stops any queen d5 check, so that's just not going to be possible. The moves I'm thinking about for white to defend are queen g1. But the problem is that hangs queen takes h4. I think queen e1 just works. I'm not really seeing a defense. And I'm going to play queen e1. And it is the correct move. So king h2 and now bishop e4. Which also cuts off communication immediately from the queen and h4. So then queen takes h4 is already a threat. Just ruling out any possible defenses. There's no other way to attack the black king besides attacking on this diagonal. And there's no really other way to control the h1 square, and no really any other way to intercept. So I'm going to play bishop e4. And it is correct. Queen takes c4. That obviously just gives up a queen. Didn't really need to check that beforehand. And we got that one right. Yeah, it just turns out that, this pawn is actually very useful. It's an umbrella pawn. The problem with that is that white can't take their own pawn, and obviously it's illegal. We're not going to take a white's pawn. Even if it was legal, we're not going to take it because that intercepts that diagonal. It's a real problem for white. He would love to have this pawn just disappear from the board and be able to threaten queen g7 or queen h8 at any moment. So, whereas white doesn't have that luxury of any pawns protecting his king, so queen e1 check just forces everything. Or not everything, just pretty much forces mate. The computer's already spitting force mate at this point. Force mate in 15. That was a good one. Let's move on to this next one. So white is right now down a piece. The pawns are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. White has a pawn for a piece. Obviously, black's king is very exposed. White has a queen and a rook that are approaching the black king. But we should be careful because we don't want a situation where the king just runs away to the queen side and gets safe. That would not be ideal. Then we really just be down material. Also, our queen is under attack by the pawn, so immediately thinking about queen moves or a rook check. There's pretty much nothing else to consider. Let's just start off with rook h8 check. I think if rook h8 check, there could just be king e7, queen g7 check, king d8. Follow guide the king possibly just escaping to the c6 square. Sorry about the coughing. Yeah, I think rook h8 probably just forces the king into the direction that he wants to move in. So I'm not really too confident in that check. Let's say rook h8 check, king e7, rook e1 check. That actually looks pretty promising, to tell you the truth. May have actually just stumbled across that. What could be the correct move here? We'll just keep going because by process of elimination, we should be able to get the correct solution. So rook h8 check. King f7 I don't think is possible because of queen h5 check, king e7, and rook e1 check. And there's 3 pieces attacking the rook on e8, so that's not going to work. So rook h8 check, king e7 is going to be critical. And again, I think queen g7 just forces king d8 and queen takes, rook takes e8, king takes e8, queen g8 check, king d7. Again, forces the king into the direction that the king wants to. And we just exchanged a pair of rooks for no reason. So rook h7, king e7. I think just rook e1 though. Rook e1 check, king d7 could be the only issue. Because the point is queen g7 check, rook e7. Yeah, I'm not really seeing a way to get out of or just avoid mass exchanges, to tell you the truth. The knight protects the rook on c8, though. There's no way we can just deflect the king away from the rook on c8 because it's already protected. So once again, just rook h8 check, king e7, rook e1 check, king d7. There might be queen takes f5 check, though. There might be queen takes f5. Yeah, because now... now I don't think... Yeah, because then the rook on e8 will be hanging if the king just runs away. And rook e6, after that check, will probably just be met with rook h7, followed by taking the rooks. I think it's just going to be rook h8 check. We'll just do a final calculation. Rook h7, rook h8 check. We already ruled out king f7 due to queen h5. King e7, rook e1 check. King d7, queen takes f5 check. Rook e6, and then rook h7 check. Yeah. Rook e1, queen takes f5. Yeah, and it's the exact same. Rook a6, rook h7 check. Just going to win a lot of material. The rook can't go back and block. The king has to move away from the defense of the rook on e7. That was a nice one, too. Trying to just being precise with all the checks. Just going over any other possible moves. Yeah, queen h6 check. The queen doesn't want to lead here. See, after queen g7 check, king d8, we're pushing the king into the direction he wants to move in. But the problem is we're not bringing in new pieces. Rook h8 check, rook e1 check. We're bringing in new pieces into the attack. So driving the king where he wants to move to is not going to work because there's too many things being attacked. or things are being attacked one too many times. What I meant to say. But yeah, cool one there. Moving on to the next one. Okay, so we are a piece down in an endgame. Black is up 2 pawns. These 2 pieces are kind of out of play. We have a pawn on g7, where the rook is right now not controlling the queening square. This bishop, I don't think, will be able to control the queening square. And we'd love to promote that pawn, honestly. So, the problem is, if we play a move like rook g1, just trying to, just trying to force promotion there. The problem is I think the king could probably just sit on a square like g8. It's also possible that black could just play a move like maybe even just like I was gonna say there probably could be a move like bishop a6, but then bishop h5 check, king g8, bishop f7 is a typical theme. It's also possible though if rook g1, then maybe even bishop takes g7. Rook takes g7, I don't think is going to do much after king f6, and then e5 check is all of a sudden something to consider. And hey, white got rid of that pass pawn. I think this position requires white to be a little bit more forcing. So I'm looking at the move bishop f5 check, or bishop h5 check. And the king has to go to g8. King f6 allows promotion, so that doesn't work. Bishop h5, king f7. And I could play the move rook f1 to threaten bishop f7 mate. And if rook b7, then again I think rook h8 will do it. Or rook f8 will do it. I need to drink some water. Do I have any water left? A little bit. I was recovering from a cold recently and my throat still isn't really back to normal. But anyways, I'm going to try to put up with it. Bishop h5 check. King g8. Rook f1. Let's see. It's also possible that there could be the move bishop f6 and that variation, because rook takes f6 runs into e5 check, followed by maybe bishop e6. But I think just rook takes at that point. I'm not really sure about that. Or actually, no. Bishop h5 check, king g8, rook f1. I think there's just bishop takes g7. Because bishop f7 check gets met with king h8. And that doesn't do anything anymore. So yeah, and then we'll just pick up these 2 pawns. So we have to be a little bit more forcing. Bishop h5 check, king g8. And I think the move bishop f7 check immediately makes it simple, because king takes f7 is forced. Then rook f8 check, rook f1 check. All right, you all didn't have to hear that one. But anyways, just going from the beginning, bishop h5 check, king g8, bishop f7 check, sacrificing the bishop, king takes, rook f1 check. And if king g8, then king g8, then rook f8 is mate. If any other move at the king, then just promotes. And we should be okay. And finally, if bishop f6, I believe just rook takes f6, king takes f6, and promote. And if any e5 check, just a move on a dark square will be okay, just king h2. So that's what I think it is. Bishop h5 check, bishop f7, rook f1, bishop f6, and that should be met with rook takes f6. King takes, and then promote. And again, if e5 check, just any move to a dark square would be okay. And yeah, the rook also has to protect the bishop, and the bishop can't move because it's pinned to the rook. Queen g7 check, queen takes h7. I mean, everything's falling. Queen takes d5. So yeah, that's just pure use of just forcing moves working. So just also going back, yeah, rook f1 I believe just runs into bishop takes g7. Because black is already up a piece, he can afford to give back the piece to get rid of those 2 pawns, which is the only thing that's keeping white in the game here. And then also going back, I think if just rook f1, Again, even bishop takes g7 here. So yeah, using the forcing moves to make sure that bishop takes g7 is never a possibility. So really, really nice. Let's go to another one. All right, we got a pawn ending. I feel like I've seen this one before, to be honest. So there's obviously just two candidate moves. The candidate moves I'm thinking about are h4 and king f3. Okay. Thank God I could mute my microphone. So let's just consider those two. So the first move I consider is king f3. And I think white really has only one decision, which is king d3. We could also rule out if e4 is a possibility, trying to give up the pawn to just regain opposition. So let's just see. King f3, e4, king takes e4, king e2. And actually, I think white is drawing, because if h4 takes g3, just king f1, and it's just going to be a draw. The king will just sit in front of the pawn. See, I think king f4, just e4 is going to force a draw after king takes e4 and king e2. That's not really going to work. So the other move to consider is h4. And after takes, then g3. But I think king e2. So I was thinking maybe h4 takes king f3 then. But king f1. Or king e1. And then king takes h3, h5. King f4, Yeah, we're out of the square. We can't even win that. So let me go back to king f3. Maybe if e4 we don't even have to take. We could just play Yeah, I don't think we have to take. I think we could play something like h4 ourselves. Or maybe after king f3, e4, king takes g3, e5, h4, e6, h3, e7, h2, e8, g1. Can we win that endgame? Queen e5 check. I don't think it's possible. I think white's just going to check on e5 or even e3. e5 probably, just to take white away from that diagonal. Then queen g2. Then queen e4. Then king h2, queen h7, king g1, queen h7, and vice versa. So I don't know if that will work. King f3, e4. Maybe h4 takes and king g2. e5, g3, e6, f2, e7. No. Okay, hold on. King f3, e4, h4. Takes g3, e5, g. Okay, no, we'll be a tempo ahead there. So king f3, e4, h4. What about e5? Okay, let's see. King f3, e4. Okay, I just want to make sure this is a draw. King takes e4, king e2. I don't think there's h4. Wait, no. I'm crazy. King f3. e4, king takes king e2, king d4, king d2. The pawn's gonna be out. The king's gonna be out of the queening square, I imagine. Okay, hold on. I missed that. I missed that possibility that we can just allow white to keep opposition and just force him out of the queening square. King f3, e4, king takes, king e2, king d4, king d2. h4 takes g3. No, he's in the square. So king c4, because if king c2, obviously h4. So, okay. King f3, e4, takes, king e2, king d4, king d2, king c4, king e3, king c3, king f4, king d3, king g5, king e3, king takes h5. Wait. Hold on. Okay, it's a long calculation. I have to make sure I'm not getting trebucheted. King f3, e4, king takes e4, king e2, king d2, king d4, king d2, king c4, king e3, king c3, king f4, king d2, king g5, king e2, king takes h5, king f3, king h4, trebuchet. White wins there. Just want to make sure I really cannot play h4. Takes g3. No, he just hops back into the square there. So king f3, e4, king takes, king e2, king d2, king d4, king d2, king c4, king e3. No, I'm going to move behind there, it seems. Just want to make sure one more time. Okay. So king d4, king d2. This is tricky. I thought I had this option, but I don't think so now. King c4, king e3. Yeah, the king is within the square. And I can't go back to save my pawns. I can't go around. The king just kind of just shoulders me. If the king was on e3 in that position already, maybe it would be a little bit different. But yeah, I don't think that's working. King f3. So I just want to check again. h4 takes. King f3. But again, just king e1. That's what I'm looking for. So h4 takes g3. No, I think there's no other move than king f3, but I just need to work out e4. Okay, well, I was thinking of, forgot the other line I was thinking of. King f3, e4, h4 takes. Okay, king f3, e4. I don't know if I can afford to play king takes. King takes g3, e5, h4. No, he'll promote first. King f3, e4, h4, e5. Takes. No, they're h3 and he's a move behind. King f3, e4, h4 takes. No, he's a move behind either way. I don't know why. I think I hallucinated maybe. I think I give white an extra move. King f3, e4, h4. Wait, no, I didn't. e5. So that's the critical variation. So I have two choices: h takes g3, or just h3. So h3, e6, h2, e7, h1 equals queen, e8 equals queen. So what's the difference between having the queen on h1 and having the queen on g1? That's what I'm trying to figure out here. Well, it's on a dark square, so I think I may have... Okay, I see now. Okay, now I see it a little more clearly. I took some time. So it's going to be h takes g3. So king f3, e4, h4, e5, h takes g3, e6, g2, e7, g1 equals queen, e8 equals queen, queen d4 check. And wherever the king moves, he's forced onto an unfavorable square. If he goes on the e-file, I check on the e-file, trade queens, and the g-pawn should win. I think. Yeah, if the king just moves away to anywhere on the c-file, then I check on e3 or e4. And yeah, if the king moves to e1, then queen e3 check, takes, king f1, king f3, king g1, king g3. Whew, finally got that one. Okay, king f3, e4, h4, h takes, push again. Yeah, just showing queen d4 check is the key move there. Queen c2, queen e4 check, and just promotes. And if king e1, queen e3 check, queen takes, and then I just step in front. That was definitely a little bit of a tricky one. I think I spent a little too much time there. I think I just hallucinated. But I still got it done. All right, 2576. All right. So right now, black is up a pawn. No, I'm sorry. Sorry, he's up 2 pawns. The king is very weak on that diagonal. And immediately when I see that, I'm immediately spotting some forcing moves on that diagonal. And immediately just when I see the sequence of the queen on h3, the knight on d5, and the bishop on b4, the immediate pattern I start thinking about is queen g2 check, king takes, knight takes f4, double check. King h1, knight h3 mate, and I think that's just the answer. That's just the pattern that I've seen so many times. And it works here. Queen g2 check, king takes, knight takes f4. King g1, knight h3 mate. If king f2, knight f3 is also checkmate because of the rook taking the squares on the e-file. And the rook can't even move. It's pinned. I was going to suggest maybe rook takes e1, but it's right now pinned. So once again, queen g2 check, king takes g2, knight takes f4, double check. It doesn't matter if king f2 or king g1, knight h3 is checkmate. And that's correct. Knight h3 is mate. Yeah, that's a really pretty one. That's just seen from a lot of like puzzle books and trainers. Yeah, king f2, knight h3 mate is also really pretty with those 3 pieces coordinating together. Really nice stuff. All right, let's move on to the next one. We're now 2587. All right, white is right now down a piece. He has a pawn for it. The king is all of a sudden very weak, as I can see. Looking at this bishop, I see it connecting with this diagonal. The knight on f6 helps control the h7 square. I immediately look at moves like queen h7. Or not queen h7, queen g6, intending queen h7. And think if queen h7 or queen g6, threatening mate. The only way where I leave for black to defend it is to play bishop takes f6. But that does allow queen takes h6 check. Queen h7. Queen takes f6 check. Queen g7. I'm sorry, queen g7. Yeah, so queen g6, bishop takes f6. There could be rook takes f6 too. But that could be met with queen g7. And the point is I also have rook takes e6, bishop takes. And queen takes e6, but I'm still down in exchange. So I don't think that's going to work. So I think queen g6 is the only thing to consider. So bishop takes f6, queen takes h6 check. King g8 I think is abysmal. That's going to allow rook takes f6. And I don't know if there's a reliable way to stop rook g6 in that position. At the very least. There could also be moves like knight d5. That could be playable. Because there's no queen to the f-file. There's only queen to d8. And then that's going to get hit with rook f7. So I wonder if that could be a little more effective. Well, no, not really, right? Because there's going to be queen c5 check. That's a big problem. So yeah, the only move I think is just going to be queen g6. That's really going to force black's hand. Because queen c5 is going to be met with king h1 and still threaten that. Bishop takes. There might even just be e4 just winning on the spot. Something like that. So yeah, queen g6. Bishop takes. Queen takes h6 check. Queen h7. Queen takes f6 check. Queen g7 though. I'm not really finding anything after that. So maybe I'm trying not to give another check there. Queen g6. Bishop takes f6. Maybe just rook takes f6. I said there was queen g7. That's kind of the issue. Hold on a second. Queen g6 takes. Queen takes h6. King g8. I don't think there's I don't think there's d4 trying to open up the bishop. Okay, one more time. Queen g6. Bishop takes f6. Queen takes h6 check. Queen h7. Queen takes f6 check. Queen g7. I'm really finding a way to break through. Whew. Oh my god. Okay. Could also be just maybe knight takes d7, queen takes, and then queen g6. With the idea of rook f6 now, or rook f7. So once again, queen g6, Because I'm not really finding anything. I mean, I'm able to win a pawn, but I'm not able to win the game, it feels like. It is possible that it could just be rook takes f6. It's very well possible. But it just doesn't feel right. Queen g6, bishop takes, queen takes, queen h7. Queen takes f6 check, queen g7, queen h4 check. Oh, I see. If queen h4 check, if king g8, then bishop h7, bishop b3. Can't say it. So once again, queen g3, bishop takes, queen takes h7, queen h7, queen h6, queen h7, queen takes f6, queen g7, queen h4 check, queen h7, takes, rook f7, wins the bishop, and I'm up 2 pawns. Yeah. Queen takes h6. Yes, because of here, takes, and rook f7. That's what I was. That's the key to the puzzle there. And I'm up 2 pawns. This is obviously winning. Yeah, it doesn't look like the moves like this were enough because of just queen c5. This didn't look like enough. Queen g6. I think there's just too many ways to defend. Yeah, just knight d7, just kicking the queen out. There's time for that. Because queen g6 you have to take, and then just the last queen takes h6. So again, just looking for the most forcing move there. And we're at 2597, and we're going to finish off with a rook endgame. And I think this one is an easy one, honestly. I think this is going to happen with rook g4 check, king moves anywhere, rook takes f g2, king takes g2, a4. I'm going to pick up g5, and then I'm just going to pick up the b pawn. The king will have to pick up the g pawn. I don't think there's too much to consider here. Take, and a4. And now king takes g5. And we got it. That was a quick one. Yeah, just the theme recognizing of using one pawn to freeze 2. Because the problem is that the king has 2 choices. Stay in front of this pawn or go after the a pawn. If it goes after the a pawn, it leaves the square of this pawn. So if it just keeps going after it, he's going to be out of the square, obviously. And the other choice is to, stay in front, but then we'll just go after, pretty much just go after the b pawn. So for example, just king e5. If the king goes after g6, then we just go after this. And no b4 ever works because of en passant, which is the benefit of that. And if instead the king tries to go and, try to protect this pawn, then we could just play g5 now, and the king has a choice. Try to go jet the b pawn or protect the b pawn and let this pawn promote. And we got to 2597. Now, in like all of them, I think we have to do one more to just really cement it. So we're at 2604. Let's see what we can do. And it's another rook endgame. Wonderful. So immediately here I see another pass pawn theme. And it has to do with making a pass pawn on the queen side. So immediately see rook takes e4, f takes e4. The king is well within the square of the pawns. So rook takes e4, f takes e4, c takes b6, takes, and then a4. And the king is just well out of the square of all those pawns. And the pawns can never advance because if any d4, our king doesn't even have to approach, and any d3, then just king f2. So I think it's just going to be rook takes e4. It doesn't matter what black takes back with. We're just going to take and play c takes, and then a4 followed by a5. I think intuitively that's okay. Takes, a4, king f6, a5, take. Yeah, he's well without the square of the pawn. Takes. No, we got it wrong. No, we got it wrong. Is it a4? Is that just too slow? Wait, it's b5. It's b5. Does a4 not work? It's too slow? Or does this work? It's too slow. C5, A5. Black can hold this. Oh, it's a mutual race. It is too slow. B5 is just a breakthrough. Ah, too quickly. Too confident and too quick. Oh, man. Yeah, B5. The C6 pawn's too weak. I didn't notice that. And again, the king's out of the square. All right, that's okay. We can work our way back up. I'll just try to break it again, and then we'll be done. Or try to pass 2607. We'll try to pass 2607. Okay. So right now it's 2 rooks, 3 pawns versus a queen, and 4 pawns. Tons of checks near our king. At the very least, we don't want to get perpetualed or mated. So it's obviously going to be moves with the rooks. The queen's kind of locked in here. Doesn't control any of the squares where the rooks can move to. So there's 2 moves to think about. Rook takes b2 check or rook c2 check. So let's find out. And I think it's going to be rook takes b2 because I don't want rook c2 check. You know, king here, and then king kind of goes this way. Because then we have to play rook c1. Rook takes b2 won't work because then there's just going to be a perpetual with the queen at least. So then you have to play rook c1, king e2, rook takes b2, and king d3. Which is not what we want. So I think rook takes b2 check is going to be the forced move. And then let's say king f3, rook c3 check, king e4 though. The king's running to e6. That is very irritating. Maybe it could be rook c1. Or rook c2 check. Let's see. Rook takes b2, king f3. You know what? It could be rook b3 check. No, because even then there's king e2, rook c2, king e1, and that's not good. Or king d1, attacking c2. So, rook takes b2 check, king f3. Maybe it could be rook... No, it's not rook b3 check after that. For the same reason. So rook takes b2 check, king f3, rook c3 check, king e4. Maybe d5 check? Because if king takes e5, then obviously rook check. And if king takes d5... Hold on. Let's go back to the beginning. Rook takes b2 check, king f3, rook c3 check. Because obviously if king g4, then there is rook g2 check, king h4, rook c4 mate. So rook takes b2, king f3, rook c3 check, king e4, d5 check. King takes d5. Rook d2 check. You can just go king e4. F3, rook c3 check, king e4. Maybe we can hold off on d5 check. Because I don't want to play rook e2 check and then he plays king d5. And he just gets to e6. That's terrible for us. So once again, d5 check. King takes d5 is not possible. King takes d5, though. So which rook check is going to be best? Yeah, because if rook e2 check, there also could be king c6. But now I see rook d2 check. Because if king e6, then we have rook e6 check, forcing yeah, just that's winning. But the question is, if king e4, what next? Man, tough. Rook takes b2 check, king f3, rook c3, king e4, d5 check, king takes d5, rook d2 check, king e4. Because if rook e2, he just goes back. Could be that d5 check is the wrong way. This problem is the king just gets to e6 and gets shelter there. So d5 check, king takes d5. Oh, crazy. Okay, so d5 check, king takes d5. With the rooks on c3 and b2, what's the right way to go? Rook d2 check, king e4. Can't. Oh wait, am I stupid? I think it's just rook d4 check, right? King takes and then rook check. Yeah, okay, it's that. Yeah, I don't know why that took me forever to see. I just have this. I feel like I maybe saw it before and I just, again, hallucinated. But I got that one. All right. Yeah, just, that's the key move, because the move I was also considering was just playing like something like this, but then the king gets all the way to e6. Then he's sheltered, and then queen f7, and then I'm in big trouble. d5 is the only move that prevents that because of all the potential skewers. So, for example, here, this doesn't work because of rook c6 check. Yeah, king takes e5, rook here check, and wins. Yeah, and this is obviously totally winning. So d5 check allows that line to be open, allows those possibilities with the skewer. Both ways. All right, this one now. We're down a piece. We have 3 pawns for it. Our king is both kings are mutually weak. White's king is definitely open to a lot of checks. Right now, I don't think we could take the queens. I think just rook here, and we're just in big trouble. Because king e7, and then imagine the other rook takes, and then mates. So that's not good. We can't take the queen. We have our own checks, though, which is the good thing. So if we can lure one of the rooks away from that would be pretty good. So the first move I'm thinking about, I thought about rook g3 check, but the problem is bishop takes. Queen takes rook g2. Or not even, just king h1. I think I'm forced to repeat, because you never want to play this. So I think that would just be a draw. Because a rook g2, I think there could potentially be queen e3 check. And that would be winning. So, potentially. Yeah, I think rook g3 takes. Is just going to be a draw after king h1. You can't really add another attacker and you just keep giving checks. Because again, rook takes f8, you never want to play that. Because just rook takes. So, the other move I'm thinking about is just queen g4. Now, the problem with that, of course, is rook g2. Because king h1 is going to run into rook h3, which I think is fantastic for us, of course. But again, here just rook g2 with a similar problem. Let me go back to rook g3 check. Bishop takes, queen takes, rook g2, king h1. Yeah, we cannot play rook takes f8. That's just impossible. Yeah, the only move I can consider is queen g4. And the move to think about is rook g2. Yes, I can't play queen d4 check as much as I want to play that move. I'd like to favorably take the queen, but I don't see a way to do it. There also isn't a threat right now. That's very important to keep in mind. White does not have a threat against our king. Like, queen takes d8 is not a threat. So we could have a move to just do whatever we want, essentially. So there could be rook d1. Which, how playable is that really? I'm not sure. Because obviously rook takes d1 is not possible. But the queen could just move to just about anywhere. Probably just maybe here's the safest place to go. If that happens. Actually, after let's see, rook g3 check, bishop takes, queen takes g3, king h1. Could there be a check on somewhere like h4? Or does that not make a difference? It could also just be after here, king h1, queen h3, just rook h2. It's very possible too. Wait, this is possible. Because rook takes king here. Because bishop b8 I can just take. And if rook here, then there's just rook here. So takes here. And rook here, then there's just check here. And, or not check, I can just put it there. Yeah, I can take the queen. King a7. Rook d7. I completely missed that. That's possible. Because bishop b8, I can just take and the rook can't come back around. I just totally missed that. Because here. Now I could take, because this is not mate, I can go back to b7. Or no, sorry. Can go here. It'd be totally safe. Wow. I just totally missed all of that. Oh my goodness. My voice is starting to leave me. I hope it doesn't. Yeah, I just missed that was possible. This doesn't work. Because here, just rook h2. Winning. This is attacked. This is attacked. This is defended. Wow. I just completely missed that. Rook d7. Interesting. That was a defensive puzzle. I didn't anticipate that to be. So I think maybe this could be the last one. We'll see. The goal is right now is just to beat 2607. Just get a new all-time high. And so far, I think this has been pretty accurate. I've been a little bit slow on like finding like the exact move, but I think I've been doing okay so far. It took me a while, but I'm able to find it. All right, so here, materials equal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Knight's under attack. Immediately, I think about moves like knight e4, knight c3. I'm also thinking about moves like b3 to just attack a2. I'd also attack c2 because I also see bishop f5 is on the way. So b3 takes, I think, just bishop f5 check is pretty strong, followed by queen takes a2. And knight takes b3, of course. So b3 takes, I think just knight takes, threatening queen a1 mate, takes bishop f5 check, king c1. Queen a1 check, king d2. Queen takes b2 check, king e1. That looks so winning, but I just want to make sure it's clear. b3 takes, bishop f5. King c1. There's also just rook c8, which makes it even easier. Potentially? There isn't like knight c3 that blocks. Okay, let me just calculate to completion. b3 takes, bishop f5, king c1. No, it is rook c8. Because knight c3 I just take. Yeah. Okay, that was not anticipated. But I think I could just play takes and then bishop f5 all the same. Honestly. Maybe I have to take on a2. No, I think it's just b takes c2. Check. Yeah, because takes, bishop f5, king c1, knight b3 check takes, and queen a1. Yeah, because king c1 just knight b3. Yes? It's not that clear. Just rook c8, wow. And if takes, then just knight b3 now. Because, okay, I have rook takes c3. Yeah, typical, like, queenside, Sicilian, dragon stuff. Yeah. Knight b3 check is still good, though. But not as accurate, though. Even though I get this. But I guess the attack is just ferocious. Okay, it just leads to just a winning position here. Or just a one endgame with the extra pawn. But yeah, rook c8 is a lot more killer, though. Yeah, really nice stuff. b3. Typical to just, finding the most forcing move possible to clear open the diagonal, because this just threatens mate. This just threatens check, and that's just really strong. You can't really ignore it. B takes a2 for starter. Queen takes a2. Then b takes c2. King takes. Bishop f5. King d2. Queen takes b2. King e1. Just queen b4. And knight d3 mate. That's a funny finish. So that's going to force knight c3 and then takes. And this should still be fantastic. Yeah, it is. And that's it. Did we do it? Yeah, we did. We got to 2608. Okay. So let's just show it. Yeah, 2608. So those are some cool puzzles. I think I was able to play pretty accurately. There's only one that I messed up, and I was able to just point out what I got wrong. And yeah, it felt pretty sharp. I did notice that like I was like missing like the obvious move, but like by process elimination I was able to get there, but I did take a little bit of time. So that's something that I could still improve on with practice. But at the very least, I can say I'm accurate. That's the whole thing. You want to be accurate. So yeah, but clearly things to work on, but everybody has things to work on. So that's something I'm just going to work on, being a little more efficient, try to be a little more cognizant of like when something doesn't work, don't try to make it work. That's a big thing to take away. All right, I hope you all enjoyed. Leave a comment below if you have any questions or anything you want to suggest, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.